Well, hello there. Um, this is going to be the last of our public salons. Um, yeah, we've been trying to kind of figure out this format for a little over a year, and the I think that there's such a glut of content when you look at platforms like YouTube, and I think that the advent of AI is going to just make that increase. And so, there's just so little structure to these that I think the better thing for us to do is going to be to keep these in the Patreon space, and then just put clips on YouTube of things that are maybe some succinct moments. The idea with Patreon is not that it's a money-making venture. We want everyone to be able to access everything. But there's that cliche, if you can't see the product, you are the product. And platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and everything, I just don't know how they're going to go in terms of accessibility and in terms of, people talk about the algorithms all the time and stuff like that. So the reason that I like the idea of Patreon is not that it's something that I think is really going to specifically further the work that I'm doing, as much as it's just kind of, I keep thinking of it like a walled garden. That's why the tiers are like soil and seed and water and sunlight. So the idea there is just, we're all paying $1 a piece to be there. And it's just kind of like being at a cafe and ordering tea or something to keep the venue going. So after tonight, we'll still be doing the first Thursday of every month, but it'll be at patreon.com/Thomas Negovan. And that link will be underneath this at the end. And then the other thing is, I don't have one here, but we really we didn't do nearly as much, if we didn't really do anything with the Passport Club. And so that's another thing that we really want to ramp up this year. So we're going to be spending a lot more time focusing on making the Patreon a little more of a real world experience and a little more intimate, just to try to, the thing that we're trying to do with these internet things is perpetuate some semblance of what the gallery experience was. And I don't feel like we've hit it yet. So we're working on it. We've got some ideas. And part of that is going to be trying to, I think, keep things a little separate. We watched the Social Dilemma documentary as a family the other day. And I'd seen it before, but if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. And it just made me realize, especially with everything happening with AI, there's another great Tristan Harris video about everything happening with AI. And I'm seeing it just in the last 3 months. There's entire websites that are just fake content that doesn't make any sense. So anyway, in closing, I just feel like putting rambling things out onto YouTube is not really helping narrow the focus. And I feel like it's important that we do that with the work that's public. My eyes are super, super dry tonight. So if you see me putting eye drops in or blinking or tearing up, that's what that is. I am happy to, hi Sean, hi Andrew. Andrew, I cherish that drawing that you sent to me. And so I think that the main thing that I was just gonna kind of do tonight was just talk a little bit about um, creativity in the age of the internet. And if anybody has questions about any of the stuff that we've done or are doing, please ask it. That's another thing that I kind of haven't felt really comfortable with this platform is it's like talking at people, and we're trying to make it more like again, more like the gallery, and it's so anyway, there's a lot going on, a lot of transitions. Another big part of it is that we're at the point now where we've had quite a number of books, and so I realized that we're not a publisher that's kind of feeling their way. Like we really do have a foothold at this point. And I need to be more responsible about making sure that that work gets circulated more efficiently than we've been doing it. And then now the cinema stuff. There will be an announcement, I'm sure, in the next week or two about everything with Caligula. There's also our other movie stuff that's happening. So I think there's like a dozen people right now. I don't know. But thank you. Oh, more. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone who is here. And thank you to everyone who's tuning in later. Again, these things tend to be a little disorganized, which is why we'll be moving them behind the Patreon wall. So the things that are happening right now is we've got the second Jugendstil book that's going to be delivered, I believe next month is when those are shipping. The, what's the name of the book? Beautiful Macabre. Beautiful Macabre will be shipping this month. Oh, I've been told that Jugendstil 2 is shipping in March. Beautiful Macabre is shipping in January and February. We are a family business, and so when we sell as many books as we did with Beautiful Macabre, which is really exciting and really thrilling, it does take us a while to get the packages out. We work really diligently on it, but everybody's got their variants and add-ons and stuff, and so that takes a while. And I'm gonna actually dampen my face a little bit because my eyes feel so dry. And then I don't know if I should be hello from Massachusetts. I don't know if I should be tipping off what we're doing after these books ship. Should I say? It's going to be Art Nouveau Dragons. We're doing a book of illustrations from the 19th century that are all kinds of weird mythical creatures. And I'm very excited about that. Very excited. Kat, is this your question or did someone send this in? It's a great question. What is the relevance of, she said it's me, what is the relevance of books and documenting the history of art in an age where one can generate desired visuals instantly? I think that this is such a big thing right now. Some people who I respect a lot like Sam Harris has been saying that he thinks that we're going to have to abandon the internet. And as someone that does a lot of internet research, and of course I've got a huge library, I've really been grateful for the institutions that have been digitizing their archives. And so, for example, there's one book that had cabaret performers, and it had information on this performer ECTJ, who's in Beautiful Macabre. And I just remember how hard it was to find this book, whatever, 18 years ago now. And I remember the day that I saw it digitized online, and I thought, what a gift that somebody without endless resources, because I was taking money that we were making and churning it back into these research materials. And if I couldn't afford something, I would be, negotiating, just getting a scan of a page or something. And so what was so beautiful about the way the internet was blossoming was the ability to access things that normally you'd have to physically go to an institution to be able to look at, to read. And it has reached a point where you can find almost everything online. There's still a lot. I shouldn't say that. I would say that probably maybe 65% of what I put into books are things that aren't online, like meaning in terms of data. It's old magazines, it's, maybe there's an exhibition catalog from the 30s where there's an interview with the artist like Marcel Lenoir or something, or talks about his work. But the point is there's enough. There's enough that if someone wanted to get a really solid handle on anything, they really can find it. But so then what is happening now, like I was Googling something for Caligula research, and it was talking about Malcolm McDowell having hamburger stands in Russia, which is of course not true, or owning a hamburger chain in Russia. Of course not true, but it was in there like it was a real article. And there's so many times now where I'm reading things and it's really obvious that the date is not right. And I've always been someone that likes to double and triple check data. And so my experience as a researcher is becoming not only diluted now, but it's become even more important to vet the sources. And so the thing that we're trying to do is, it's almost like a last gasp at providing really well curated images and information. And so the question of, what's the relevance of books in documenting history of art is that, if you never see an oil painting in person and you look at a digital painting, you can't tell the difference. It's not until, like I was, Kat and I went to the Getty last year, and being in front of paintings, the Rembrandt paintings there. What I was going to say is paintings that were the epitome of the craft, reminded me why the physical media is so important. And so, I'm kind of meandering because my brain is thinking about so many different things. But I think the root of the answer then to the question is that everything that's taking place in the digital world, the desired visuals being generated instantly, it's a virtual reality version of art. And so for advertising, I see it being a problem for people that do that for a living. Um, but it's kind of like if you're used to really well crafted wood furniture versus, particle board or something. There's a richness of experience that I'm worried that we're losing as a culture and that we've been losing for decades, and that this is just a natural extension of that. So in a small way, to answer your question, what is the relevance of books and documenting history in this age? I think it's just like somebody has to do it, because it's a torch that has to be carried forward, or else, what happens to us culturally? I don't know if I answered that question at all. I feel very philosophical about it. How does fostering a community on a platform like Patreon support not only our mission as art proponents and archivists, but also our desire to keep a foothold in the physical, tactile, cultural world? Well, we had a gallery for over 20 years, and I was always way more interested in the presentation of art than the sales. And so the reason that we just never made a blog or anything like that is that I'm a book person. I'm a book person. They're messages in a bottle. You can leave one at someone's house and some stranger picks it up and they just move through the world in a way that's really comfortable for me, with the way that I discovered things. And different people have had different experiences. I mean, definitely younger people will have had, maybe that experience with blogs and things like that. But I think that the reason that Patreon and Kickstarter are better for us at this point than the gallery is that the books are really important because it's like making an exhibition that can be really in depth, that people can walk in and out of at their own pace. And the reason that I think Patreon is an important side avenue to this mission is that it's just too easy on social media to get caught up in, whether it's politics or entertainment culture or, just general news. I think that it's kind of like meeting in the middle of, like in the food court at a shopping mall. And I just like the idea of being able to tuck it away just a little bit. And again, that's what the dollar is for. The reason everything is a dollar is it's meant to be completely inclusive. If there was a free website that could do the same thing, God, my eyes are so dry. Sorry. I would do that, but then on another level, there's something nice about the idea that you have to pay $1 to be there, in the sense of it really does help it stay. It's almost like when you would go out to the gallery, you'd have to put pants and shoes on and get in a vehicle and go. So I feel like it's kind of maybe a nice little barrier to entry, in terms of that it requires just that tiny, tiny, tiny bit of effort to be there. And when we're in there and we're talking, I really would love advice for how to kind of build more communication in that community. But yeah, that's another conversation. Can I share more about the Dragon Book content? I'll tell you this. There's no symbolism in it. It's an artist named Anton Cedar, and he was an art instructor. And what he was trying to do, it was kind of like the Mucha decorative folios that he made where they were trying to utilize shapes in the way that things moved through the shapes. Um, and it's just a really, really spectacular, incredibly obscure collection. And it's something that I had bought years ago, and and it's pretty expensive. It's I think that Dover might have done a copy of it, but we want to do it like Le Pater. We want to do a big book. There won't really be text in it. The idea is to make it look like an old folio. Um, and it's just a really spectacular artist that people don't know, don't talk about, who's never had a really great presentation. Um, and everything that I've been doing has been so intellectually heavy, that it's just kind of meant to be a nice, I wouldn't say it's a light book, because the German artists kind of have a nice density to them, but it's not going to be text heavy. I'll just be writing an introduction with some history. I really appreciate the compliment about the Mucha book. I will say this: the esoteric content continues. It's going to sound crazy. It's super prominent in Caligula. It's super prominent. There's a lot of the hero's journey present in there, and Gore Vidal had written some things in that were based in some Hermetic thinking. There's a Hermetic play in there about Isis and Osiris, a play within a movie kind of thing. So yes, if you love the esoteric content, the things that I work on will continue to provide that. And then there's another movie thing that Aaron and I are working on, but it's kind of early to talk about that. But that's pretty heavy in the esoteric content. There's all these great questions, and they're all coming from Cav. What are your thoughts on the word content? It is what it is. I think that I've been thinking about this a lot with cinema. This is funny, actually. I'm reading this. Let me see, how do I do this? I've been reading this book. Where's the focus plane? Ooh, there we are. I'm reading about Griffith, and looking at some of the stills, and I don't think this is going to work to show this. There's one really beautiful one that I don't think it's going to show up on here, but like I'm looking at the graininess and the shadows and the shapes, and just thinking about what cinema is supposed to be as an art form, and thinking about how much of what we watch now is so formulaic, like what we're presented with from the industries, and really, at the end of the day, I've been having to deal so much with the distribution stuff around Caligula. It's just really illustrated to me how irrelevant the artwork is to the viewership and the eyeballs and the monetization machines. And how disappointing that is for anyone who cares about storytelling, cares about more philosophical or metaphysical or spiritual or esoteric content. And it does make me wonder, like, where are things going? I guess that it's always been content. But it's just, as everything keeps, merging underneath fewer and fewer companies, there's just less and less room for that. and I don't have a great answer to this question just because it's super prominent in my mind. The movie that Aaron and I are working on next is really, we're looking at, are we going to do crowdfunding? Like, how do you do this in a way that lets it be something more in the realm of art than content? So yeah, I feel bad that I don't have a good answer for that, but I think about it a lot. I don't like it, but it is kind of where we are. These questions are coming in. What guidance would I give someone who loves art but might feel intimidated by the expanse of reading and or academic material often associated with appreciating art? I would say that it depends on what art you're doing, but I would almost recommend, the real journey for me is an internal one. And so the more that you're vacant spiritually, emotionally, the more that you're going to crave external praise, and the more that you're going to crave to be understood. And I feel like the more you understand yourself, the less you crave that from other people. And so I would say to any artist, my challenge would be that the real art is in the self-transformation, and that what comes out should be an extension of that. And so, for example, a lot of the art that I've worked on, whether it's Mucha with Le Pater or Caligula in film, there's a lot of me that goes into that, but I'm kind of puzzle piece transforming and explaining and reinterpreting. And I think that the thing that helps me with all of it is my own sense of trust in my own perceptions, which in a huge way comes from this internal transformation. Like, it is trusting in that path, in that journey. And so I would say to someone asking that about reading, studying, I would say, God, you're better off reading Hebron's The Prophet than a big tome on Impressionism. Because then I think with that, if you physically go to a museum and you're looking at a Monet painting, you're connecting on a deeper level with what they were trying to find in themselves through that expression. You had the Fauvists, for example, that were students of Gustave Moreau. And so Gustave Moreau, incredibly ornate mythological paintings. And his students were like, well, how much further can you take that? You can't paint more ornately than Gustave Moreau did. So the thing they did was squeeze out the blue paint and just whoosh, slap it across. Like, that's the ocean. Like, how do you get that feeling? Like, they were chasing the feeling. And so in a lot of ways, when you look at that art that looks so primitive from the Impressionists and the I'm drawing a blank on the artist there because it's after my time, but the artists that were that were the students of Moreau, I can picture the art but can't think of the names. The sentiment is what was important. And so I think whether you paint really detailed or whether you paint loose or whether you work in charcoal or whether you work in cornflakes or whatever it is, The sentiment is what's important. So it's a very, very long-winded answer, but I would say don't be intimidated, because the solution to your personal problem is only going to be interpreted through diligence and self-examination. No amount of books in the world is going to help with that. It's not a book learning thing. It is a fearlessness and willingness to sacrifice your ego on the altar of placidity, of finding peace, of finding internal harmony. I don't know if that helps or not. That's a weird answer. I know it is. There's a lot of questions here. A lot of media. I don't understand this question. Or this one. Hold on. How do you challenge the limitations? Oh, okay. Okay, so something Kat wrote in about. Um, One of the things she's commenting on is she's talking about the limitations of art and printing. You can have 3 Gustav Klimt books and look at Pallas Athene, and one's purple and one is light blue and another is green. It's horrible the way that none of these things were ever color corrected. There's some great books on Grand Guignol that everything in there looks like they took 72 DPI images off the internet. And so the only thing that I can say is that something that we do is we always work from originals, from super high resolution images that are really carefully color corrected. I can only say that, just that for me, that's really important. It's important for me that if you're looking at something in one of our books, it's as close as you can get to seeing the thing in person. And with things like Le Pater or this book with the dragon stuff, we're printing it to scale, and you're doing dot matrix printing with CMYK separations. It's not going to look the same as lithography. It's just not going to be as great. But the difference is you could spend $100 to get a really beautiful book instead of spending $10,000 to get the set. So it's kind of, you're knocking off 2 zeros, and it's certainly not that huge of a gap between the quality. Why does mythology have such a great presence in Art Nouveau? Mr. John, I think that what happened in a general sense, just a super quick recap, is that you had Art Nouveau coming out of the Industrial Revolution, and so you had people that were trying to have a connection to something that was other than the material world. And also coming out of symbolist art in the 1880s. And so the idea that these eternal tales were truer than life was just a really common thread. It was a shorthand. If you put deities or dragons or any of that stuff, it was just a shorthand that made sense to a lot of people. And so that's why you see that so much. But you see that kind of, I think, in every era. You do see it, like, even think about Art Deco. The differences in Art Deco, it might be Mercury, whereas in the Art Nouveau era, it might be fairies or something. It just kind of depends on which elements of mythology speak to the age. Um, yeah, that's a longer conversation. We'll have that. What would I say, Sean, are some of the challenges in conveying authorial intent in curating a gallery show versus writing a book versus making films? What do you mean by authorial intent? I'm not certain what you mean. I think what you mean, um, when you're curating a gallery show, for me, you're just trying to give things a context that relate to each other to help people maybe see the work a little more clearly. Kind of like when I was talking about the Fauvists, the students of Moreau. You appreciate it differently when you understand kind of how, in the same way that Art Nouveau influenced Art Deco, and Art Deco was a reaction to Art Nouveau, that does happen. So all of that is just meant to help with context. And I think same thing with writing a book and making films. If you're asking about like the art history books and then like Caligula, with those things, it's just a matter of figuring out kind of what the intention was and setting people's expectations up so that they can understand it in a shorter amount of time. Like if I took 2 years to understand something, how do I help someone understand that in 2 hours? And I believe that I'm able to do that. So that's what I try to do. Do I see Art Nouveau having a 2.0 or being a springboard for a new futuristic movement? I'm in such a weird space right now with this. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said yes. I might say yes again 2 weeks from now. My suspicion is that what's going to happen because of AI and because of all the technology is that it's going to become unsustainable, and that we are human beings, and that there's going to be enough of us that crave physical interaction with our worlds. And there's, is it a Buckminster Fuller quote that just talks about utopia or dystopia, that it's going to be a relay race right up to the end. And I just feel like that's kind of where we are. So the optimist in me thinks that Art Nouveau and symbolism have a thread that goes all the way back literally to the dawn of man. And so that connection with not just nature, but the way nature relates to our physical world, but then also to what our dreams are and to eternal truths. I think that's something that has a really high chance of being the kind of fuel that carries us through the next half century. So I'm going to say yes, because I believe that's where I'm going to be. I'm just in such a weird space right now where I feel like I'm just kind of analyzing the short term. Yeah, there's a lot happening with technology, and I've been really tuning into it. And I've also been, just because I've been so tied to the front of the ship with commerce around all this Caligula stuff with distribution and all of that, and seeing the way that, our wealth disparity here is crazy. And again, all of this is unsustainable. And so I just feel like we're at a point where I remember when my friend's brother was trying to explain the internet to me, It was saying, yeah, you're going to see on the side of a bus this thing that says .com. And I just didn't get it. And I feel like that's where we are now. I feel like 20 years from now is going to be unrecognizable. I think 2 years from now is going to be so different than right now. So anyway, so that's where my head is. And so a lot of things like with book publishing and trying to focus on some of the things outside of the internet, or at least on websites that are more curatorially organized, is important to me right now. So it comes back to the Patreon thing that we're doing. I mentioned sentiment earlier in terms of conveying sentiment in regards to aesthetics, academic ideals, entertainment value. Do I have to adapt how I express my own ideas and values in that? I think yes and no. I think that my ideas and values remain constant. I think I pick things to work on that where that shoehorns in. I think that like Le Pater is a really good example of when I really made that shift. I thought it was important that that carried forward into the world, and all of my sentiments and all of my thoughts and my opinions on what Muka was doing were just completely simpatico with what he was trying to say. And so by taking people on a journey to really understand all of it, I was just trying to carry that conversation forward. I think that that's why you're not going to see me writing a book on, I don't know, Art Deco glassware or, animal husbandry films of the 1950s or something. That's not stuff I connect to. Caligula was kind of a weird happy accident in the sense of that the materials were all there and it was able to get sculpted into something that I feel very symbolically, metaphysically, and creatively passionate about. I do feel that it's going to fit in with everything else that I do, that I love. And then there's books like Beautiful Macabre that there isn't a message there beyond appreciating the beauty and the things that are macabre. But there isn't, it's not like Le Pater or Caligula where there is a real, like both Le Pater and Caligula will reward if you spend days and days and days studying them. I promise it'll reward all that. With books like the Jugendstil series or Beautiful Macabre, it's kind of an entry-level point academic palate cleanser, I guess, for people to do their own work. It's more about the visuals. It's more about giving people some history, some insight, and some context, but it's meant to be a stimulation of creativity more than like a personal statement. So I don't know if that answers. Do I remember a particular artwork that I loved or felt moved or transported by as a child? It's funny. I was talking about this. I think it was with Kat yesterday. That it was Gail. It was Gail. Sorry. I was talking to Gail Pataki about art stuff, and what's the value that we have as artists, as creators, as creative people. And I was saying to her that you can't judge it on anything more than just your own internal barometer, because everything else changes. Success comes and goes. Public applause comes and goes. Some people will understand what you do. Some people won't. Some people will love it and some will hate it. And none of those aren't ever the same people necessarily. Understanding it doesn't mean they love it. But, it is an important thing for our entire culture. The backbone of our culture is art. It's what people go to when they need something. And so I was thinking about, I was using this as an example to her, that at this point in my life, like the fact that when I was a kid, if you had asked me, like, who is your most inspiring writer? It was the Michael Moorcock books that I carried around that really opened my mind up. So to have him say that he loved the Le Pater book so much that he wanted to write the introduction for it, to me, that connects me with that stuff that I loved as a kid. And then I think about all the album covers that Roger Dean did, and those were so important to me. And to have Roger Dean give me a great book quote for Le Pater. So I think that it's not necessarily even just what I loved as a kid, but the fact that I'm able to make the things that I work on today connect to that in a way that the people who made those things see that what I'm doing is exciting to them in the way their work was excited to me, makes me feel like I'm helping carry that forward. I'm going to put eye drops in, so I'm going to move off screen for a second. Let's see how that goes. And now I'm going to come back and it's going to look like I'm crying. Okay, just so that's not a weird still of me putting drops in. My eyes are so dry. I think it's I'm not used to Midwestern winters, I guess. But yeah, like when I was a kid, I loved the Dungeons and Dragons art, and I loved the Yes album covers and the Michael Whalen Elric book covers and all of that. And so those were really big for me. And I don't mean it like in an ego way, like, oh, they love what I do, but it's more just the idea of like recognizing, okay, their stamp of approval to me. It's like if someone tells you they like what you do, well, what's their criteria? And so the part of me that grew up on these things wants to hit that level. So when those people say to me, we love what you're doing, I'm like, okay, then I'm hitting my goals. I'm hitting the goals that I set for myself. And in that, by doing something completely different, but hitting those internal goals, it does then carry that wave forward. So maybe someone's not going to grow up on Yes or Asia album covers, but maybe they will look at Le Pater and be inspired the way Roger Dean was inspired. And then maybe that leads to that thing about, what is the Art Nouveau 2.0 springboard to the future? Maybe that's how it happens, is that, the influences come around again in their pure, really distilled, purest form. I think that makes sense. It sounds right. It feels right. So this is why these won't be on Facebook anymore, because I'm definitely rambling. We'll put clips online. And so we're going to move the first Thursday salons into patreon.com/Thomas Negovan, just to make sure that the content that goes onto YouTube is legitimately thoughtful, kind of edited bits, and then I'll remain available to everybody in that Patreon universe. So Kat just sent this. This is the last public salon. Future ones will be held at patreon.com/Thomas Negovan for $1 a month to be there. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about my eyes, guys. Thank you so much to each of you who have either contributed to these conversations live or tuned in for later viewing over the past 2 years. That's coming from Kat, but it's also coming from me. She typed it for me to say, but I read it because it was coming from her, and she's a part of this team. And Kat keeps telling me, stop touching my face, so when she's editing these, but I can't help it. I really feel, I don't know, you'd think someone was rubbing a cat on my face earlier or something. It's so dry and so itchy. Does anybody have any other questions or anything? We've got just a couple minutes left. And but the Passport Club is something I'm excited about. I really want to get into that. I got the idea from the H.P. Lovecraft Society, and I did ask them for permission to do it. But I like the idea of when we do have physical events, having ink stamps, so that like if you show up at the event and you've got the passport, we'll give you like the custom ink stamp, and then making some sticker stamps for the books that we publish. And to get the passports, Kat points out, it's $2.50 a month. But that's just because of the physical stuff that goes along with that. I think the main thing is we were going to do it originally at the $1, but then we realized in talking to people, a lot of people didn't care about it. So it's just kind of keeping that separate, so that if you really don't care about that kind of thing, you just come in and you've got all the content for $1. Do I see any promising attributes of AI in regards to art? See all kinds of positives. Which is a very unpopular opinion amongst my community. We used it extensively in Caligula's restoration. We couldn't have gotten John Gielgud's voice if we didn't have... So the thing that the AI can do really quickly is when you've got an old thing, you can train it to know what... Peter Jackson did this with Get Back. He trained it to know what a bass guitar was and a drum kit and a voice. So they were able to separate the tracks, which is unheard of. You couldn't do that before. And so with the files that we had all kinds of machinery noises and all kinds of things. But we were able to train it to know what John Gielgud as a human was. And anything that wasn't John Gielgud could be pulled from it. And so that audio is some of the best sounding audio in the entire film. I wish we'd had the money and the time to go do to treat everything with that. It was great. It was really fantastic. And so, that was important from a restoration point of view, completely priceless. And I think that AI is just a really, really, really fast brain. And so I think that when people type prompts in, make an image, and then say, well, now I'm an artist, I think that's problematic. I think that it's fine, but I would equate it to like when a kid has one of those toy guitars where you hit a button and it plays some music. It's the same thing. I mean, it's juvenile and it's fine, and the fact that so many people are thrilled with that shows the way that our relationship with art has become really shallow. But I do think that as a brainstorming tool, I do see value to it. But I think it has to be part of a larger relationship with art. I do think we're going to fail immensely on it. I think that all of these companies that are just looking for content now have the ability to do it without artists. And I think that that's going to be a big, big problem culturally. And so, I have very complicated feelings around it. I see it as the positive. I see us as the negative. I think that in the hands of someone thoughtful, I think it's fantastic. I think that in the hands of someone like Disney, I think it's catastrophic. And yeah, Sean just said using it to replace human skills and insights for mass production and greater profit is where it gets ethically messy. I mean, I wouldn't even say messy. I think it's just like messy is being, you're being kind as you are. You're a kind person. I think it's horrible. I think it's, I think that, I think that the idea of utopia is that we're supposed to have technology doing things that it can do so that we have more time to write poetry and eat fruit. Like I do believe that in that idyllic Maxfield Parrish fantasy mindset that in a perfect world, there are things that technology can take off of our plate. But that's where the wealth disparity stuff comes in. That's a problem for me, is that people need those jobs to eat. And so when you remove that ability for people to have a meaningful relationship with some form of a way to care for themselves and their loved ones, so that someone else can have an extra $10 million on their bonus that year is just, yeah, I have a lot of problems with that. That's something I've been thinking a lot about. So to me, that's the biggest problem with AI, is that the companies that are going to use it, like in my case, it was a gift. It was a huge gift. But that's not what people are going to be using it for. They're going to be using it to put people out of work. There's one thing I was telling, again, conversations yesterday. It was Gail or Kat, that you could have someone do a ton of concept work with AI for 1,000th of the price than having an artist do it. And it really is the same mechanism, because what the human brain is doing is looking at all of these things and trying to process it. And so if you're trying to use AI for concept work, there is some value to it that I see. The challenge that I feel is I feel like when you then remove the artist from the equation completely, the whole thing is going to fall apart. Because now you've got people that care about money, and they're looking and they're not understanding the difference between taking the seeds of something and then cultivating it and developing it into a meaningful net to support something. And so, again, I could ramble about this, but I guess the short answer is that I see immense value, and the problem isn't in the machinery. The problem is in that we as a culture have devalued art so much. It is like idiocracy, like we've made this bed. And so that comes back kind of to our publishing thing, and the things that we're trying to do is, at least in some way, I want to make it interesting and exciting for people to care about history, to care about art, to care about symbolism and meaning and exploration of some of the theories around our relationship with art. So we're at the hour mark. I'm going to give my eyes a rest. I apologize for my weird eyes tonight. Thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you so much. We've had really, really wonderful conversations on here over the last 2 years. We will definitely be continuing this on Patreon. So it's not stopping. Also, there'll still be things publicly, social media. I'm all over social media, and Patreon is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping we can nurture that garden. So patreon.com/Thomas Negovan, really, it's just $1. It's just to be there. And I try to find ways to make it up to you. And Andrew, thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you here. And I think that's it. And we'll see you guys next month. I have a very strong suspicion that we're going to have a very special guest next month. But I won't know until that day. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you so much for being here. Good night.